All right, it's just about 7:50. Ken, you good on your end? If you're talking, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now, Richie?
Yes, I can. Perfect. Want to just share your screen and then I'll kick us off?
Yes, and let's see, share screen, share. Okay, so what I did was I happened to notice that I had made my post about tonight's presentation and I had put 7:30. So once I went looking for the link again this evening in your email, I realized that the business meeting would go from 7:30 to 8. So I put posts all around the Facebook page alerting everybody to the fact that don't come on the meeting, the presentation will not start until 8 o'clock. So I'm going to stall a little bit here, and I'm just, if I could, um, the reason that this photo was taken up on Howard Pincus's railroad. I think actually you were there. What's the railroad is called?
The Naugatuck Railroad.
Doggy, right? Yeah, that's
Yep.
the name for it. And this photo of Mike. I mean, the paparazzi was all over Mike, and Mike was definitely drinking it all in. Surprising just how much energy he put out. He was like a locomotive with like massive wattage just going. He went all day, never flinched, never took a second thought. And when we got up to the top of the hill by the dam, I guess, which is where this is, right, Richie?
Yep.
We all disembarked off the train. They did a couple of run-bys, and Orrin Hellbog and, what's his name? Uh, Mr. Livesey, Dennis, and the whole troop, Howard Pincus, all of them, everybody's vying for position. I happened to break the rules a little bit and flew the drone in here to steal my shot because what I love about the drone is its ability, of course, to look down, but it's also pretty magnificent at doing portraits and making people look big. And I wanted to give Mike the power and presence that he deserves. And in this case, I just liked the scale of Mike in relation to the locomotive. You would probably remember this, Richie, but I think it was so hot that day.
Oh
Mike,
yeah.
we're all sweating. Mike has got the hat, he's got the wool coat on, and at one point, I just flew the drone right above Mike, and the blades are spinning, and the cool air is just coming down on him. It's actually like having a little portable central air unit in. But since I won't have the liberty to say some of this, I don't know. I guess we probably, Mike and I met through Rail Pace, which is, if it weren't for Mike, I probably would not be sitting here talking to all of you guys. But Mike and who also introduced me to Jim Boyd. And interestingly enough, Mike was such a supporter and a fan of every. Seemed like and he has so much of his own stuff that he was doing. Many artists don't always want to blow smoke on someone else when they're trying to fly their own sail. But Mike was so selfless in the sense that and it's kind of a blessing that we're actually having these few minutes before this starts for me to share these sentiments. But he thought the world of me. I mean, there's a picture in my Susquehanna book, right? That the portrait in the front of the book, inside the front cover or whatever it is by Mike Del Vecchio. And he introduced me to Jim Boyd. One night, he and Jim came up to, would be okay if Jim and I came up to the house, and they came up. Jim asked if he could flip through some of my slides. The next thing, he and Mike are whispered in the corner, and then Jim's taking a bunch of the slides home. And several days later, I get something in the mail, and it's a big manila envelope with a piece of cardboard, and inside is a photocopy of the mock-up of, I think it was one of the months in 1987 or 88. And here's one of the slides that he took, and he's going to use it on the cover of Railfan. So, you know, I've always been a fan of Mike, and we, even though we didn't see each other for a number of years while I took a sabbatical from rail photography, Mike looked me up at one point. He saw me on Facebook, and he said, "Are you be the same Ken Karlewicz that I remember from back in the day? Would you be he?" You know how he talks. And anyway, we got reconnected, and you know, he actually has some. You guys, can you see me on camera?
No, we can't.
Okay, so let me just share. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. The new book that will be out this late summer, early fall. I am currently working on with Otto Von Track, and it's almost finished. We're in the final stages of editing. It's called Battenkill Country: Seasons of Change. And what's interesting is, as sick as Mike was toward the end, and we had some really deep, meaningful conversations, and he would tell me about his various states of being on any given day. And I said, "Listen, I really want to get you in this book." He managed to get wherever those slides were. He said he had to move all kinds of stuff, and he sent me a bunch of scans, and there'll be a number of his photographs of the Battenkill. He and I went up together. And of course, I was a newbie at rail photography at the time. Mike blew me away. He got all the shots. And so they will be, I'm very excited to say that they will be included in this book that will be soon to be released. So that is why I found this picture actually last night, and I thought it most appropriate to include it as the header for this presentation, because you and I didn't know each other much, Richie. So when you asked me if I was interested to to present, my sole reason for never realizing how much work this would be, and I've shared it with friends. If I ever knew, and I'm trying to finish the book, I'd be like, what have I done? But it's really all because of my love and respect and appreciation for Mike Del Vecchio. So he's a tower among men, and I would not do anything less than rise to any occasion for anything that has anything to do with him. So now I'm proud to be connected to you guys, and I'm hopeful that I can be at some level a help, you know, and a benefit to the organization. And I love what you're doing with the Mike Del Vecchio library. That is really most inspiring, and so thank you. I'm just looking at the clock. We're at 7:58, so I guess we'll start in a moment. So as far as my sharing the screen, we'll get started. So I'm just going to use the keys on my keyboard, right?
Yeah. The only thing is I could see your taskbar on the side there.
This thing here.
Yeah, on the left.
All right. No, good. So how do we hide this, Richie?
Hold on, let me just click record real quick. So on the left-hand side, so maybe click the escape button to exit out of the full screen real quick.
On my keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Nope.
Do you have PowerPoint open on the left hand there? So I can't really see.
All right. I think.
Yeah, which one of those buttons is PowerPoint?
Let me go up to here. All right. Maybe you don't want to record all this shenanigans.
This is what the editing is for.
Oh yeah. Okay. PowerPoint. Let's see. All right. Microsoft PowerPoint. Oh.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Perfect. All
So now
right.
I'll just use the arrow, the right arrow key to go forward, and we should be good, right?
Yep.
Okay. So for those of you who are just joining us, I was just telling Richie King, this presentation is dedicated to the loving memory of our dearly departed friend Mike Del Vecchio, who was the king of king supporter of rail photographers, and I'm proud to be here, and it's because of Mike that I am. Okay, with that, here we go. Oh, by the way, this photo was taken, I believe it was about 2 years back in the fall, up on the Naugatuck, Howard Pincus's railroad, affectionately known as the Naugie. And this picture was taken up by the dam during photo run-bys. Excuse me. This is a Haverstraw Railroad Station in Haverstraw, New York. And when I was 5 years old, we moved from Brooklyn to a little place called Village on the Green, just north of the Haverstraw, former New York Central Railroad Station. And the main line ran right on a giant fill right past the park and all the houses where I grew up. So every day that I was out of my house, there were trains going back and forth all the time. I thought it most appropriate to include this sort of point of my rail origins, if you will. So we're starting out on the Battenkill Railroad because this is the place where I would say my real passion for railroad photography came into bloom, or bud, I should say. And this is absolutely my first picture of the 605. That's then Ron Crowd departing Eagle Bridge. I believe this was probably November 1st of 1985. And a good friend of mine, who was also a mentor, the late Richard Herbert, suggested I go up here and shoot this. And I did just that. I was so excited that I actually, looking up at the train, cropped out half of the river. So I have since learned not to do that. Here's a first or second shot into the chase. We're just north of White Creek along Route 22 and along the Owlkill River. And I believe that is Bill Tabor hanging out of the side of the window there on the conductor's side. I began to make seasonal trips up to the Battenkill, but it wasn't anything like it has been in recent years. In recent years, I actually believe I probably photographed just about every train that they ran one year. I think it was 2019 or 2020. Put a ton of mileage on my truck, but I felt like I needed to get the story, and I'm fairly confident that I did. Here is the 605 in a late afternoon sun running past the Skelly farm out in Jackson, New York, right along the Battenkill River with some empties from the mill. Here they are rolling geographically east, but timetable south, and they are passing Battenville Road here in Battenville. The water tower in the background is part of the now gone Biotech Mills, which interestingly enough was, I believe, their first revenue shipment, and also was closed down by the environmentalists for releasing stuff into the Battenkill River, which is just on the other side of the locomotive. I would say this is a very early photograph, probably 86. I am alone. They're running light over to Greenwich Junction to probably switch the mill and make up their train before heading south to Eagle Bridge. At this point, I have no idea what the whole operation is about. I'm just a goon out there with a camera running around. And this herd is long gone, needless to say. Here's the 4116. Notice the patched Battenkill Railroad emblem there on the side. This is a original D&H locomotive, which was originally in the lightning stripe scheme. D&H created a subsidiary, and they called it the Greenwich and Johnsonville. And then when Battenkill commenced operations in 1982, they were bestowed this locomotive as part of the deal, as well as a caboose. This is the railroad's largest customer. It was Agway at the time, and it is now Cargill Animal Nutrition. Here's the 4116 crossing the Owlkill, Frosty Owlkill, I should say, and he's about maybe a mile or so, mile and a half north of the Boston and Maine interchange at Eagle Bridge, New York. And again, in the early days, in the late 80s, I would be up there. I would not see a rail fan at all, probably, except for one time that I did have the pleasure of meeting Jim Shaughnessy, but it was such a brief encounter. I came screeching up at the last minute. He's standing out there on the overhead bridge. Hey, how are you? Boom, here comes the headlight. Ching, ching, ching. Here we go. And I never saw him again. And regrettably, now looking back. Here's 4116 crossing the icy waters of the Hoosick River. I remember being very excited for some reason about this particular engine, because it was a given that the 605 was like the Battenkill locomotive. So catching this sort of off tempo engine with the patchwork there was a real novelty for me. And I would typically get to the engine house in Greenwich on any given morning. I think the day that Mike and I went up there, they had both of the RS3s outside the engine house, and we were trying to figure out. There'll be a really nice picture or two by Mike Del Vecchio inside of the book with just these two behemoths inside the engine house. And of course, Mike, being a master with the camera, got the tripod out, and probably all my pictures are blurry and ended up in the trash, but Mike basically killed it. Then probably within a couple of years, I think this picture actually quite a few years, I took a big break from shooting the Battenkill. It was like, all right, I'll do the Battenkill, and then maybe a year or two later, I'll go back. This is a flanger freight that they're running south, and this is probably one of the most picturesque villages or hamlets on the railroad. And this is the hamlet of Shushan, which is in the town of Salem. But there are a multitude of photographic angles that you can't go wrong in Shushan. So if anyone's ever interested to go up to find and seek out the Battenkill, please make sure you do not miss Shushan, New York. And these are ice jams hanging off of the gutter of this house along the main street here. And I was in the roof snow and ice removal business for many, many years. And that's why I took a special notice to these icicles and chose to make this shot this way. I remember being out with Scott Hartley once, and I don't know, I think I saw a picture of Scott Hartley's where he had the kid waving to the train. So at this day, I'm standing there waiting. Obviously, they have not applied the weed control to this little short line. This, by the way, is, for those who don't know, is the former Washington branch of the Delaware and Hudson Railroad, okay? And this line connected the Fitchburg main line at Eagle Bridge and ran all the way up in through, wiggled in and out of Vermont, and ran up and connected with the Rutland branch up near Castleton, Vermont. Anyway, the little girl in the purple, as the train was blowing for the little dirt crossing, she turns and looks at me, and I said, "Don't look at me, just wave to the train." So all the kids turned around and they all started waving. But this is my Scott Hartley version of Battenkill 605 at Shushan. So this is the Fitchburg, or otherwise known as the Boston and Maine West End. I'm at Schaghticoke, New York, at Fisherman's Lane. Right behind me is a causeway that splits this body of water, and there's also a beautiful deck bridge behind me. This was a coal train, probably headed towards the Mount Tom, possibly a coal plant, but with all the flavors of spectacular flavors, actually, of the Big G. Um, Now, if you were to turn around and look behind you, this is the angle that you would see from that little causeway. Um, Empty auto racks heading west in an afternoon sun. And that's the Agway feed mill. It's Schaghticoke in the background there. Okay, so this actually, well, so much for all my little subtitles that told me what everything was and all the dates and all that, which I spent countless hours on today, but we'll forgive you, Richie. Um, so this was an Amtrak special, West Point special that ran up to West Point and back. I don't know how I found out about it, but um, might have stumbled onto it actually, but I ended up climbing a tree right there beside Doodletown Bight. And this is before they redid the trestles. So this is all the original wood timber before they installed a lot of the concrete stuff. But this Amtrak train, going south in the afternoon light there at Doodletown Bight with the Bear Mountain Bridge in the background, this was probably one of my earliest rolls of slide film. Someone told me if you shoot slides and you get a great shot and you send it to Rail Pace magazine, they'll put it in the magazine. So that's exactly what I did. And Tom Nemeth published the photo. And as you probably know, the rest would be history. Now, this picture was taken the same day that I took my very first picture of the Battenkill. And this picture was made before I photographed 605. If you remember a few minutes ago, that picture of Ron Crowd going over the bridge. And I went up to North Bennington. I was told that, the Battenkill was running 3 days a week at that point, and the VTR was coming down the same 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Went up to North Bennington. Guess who's pulling into the station? This is a freshly out shopped shop nose RS18, Jeep 18, sorry, number 801, beautiful fresh paint. And I had my bow saw with me, and I anxiously climbed up the tree. And I remember feeling ecstatic that I was almost eye level with with the conductor on the train at that time. So I sent this one into Tom Nemeth, and it ended up being the half of the rear cover in the very next month's issue after the Amtrak shot was published. So now I'm getting pretty excited. I'm a rail photographer. I'm gonna move this so I can see something here. Now, again, my friend Dick Herbert took me up and brought me for my first experience at Moodna Viaduct. I never knew what Moodna Viaduct was. Wouldn't have been able to find it if you told me. And there was word that there was an NTV4 that was coming out of Port Jervis, and we waited for about an hour. He must have got held for a passenger train. Dick decided to leave, and he just didn't want to hang around anymore. So I laid down in the grass, in the long field grass. There was a stiff breeze coming out of the northwest, and I'm waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden, 45 minutes later, I hear the rumble, and I'm standing in the field by myself with my little Minolta crummy lensed camera, and got this picture of NTV4 sailing across Moodna Viaduct. And I don't know. Tom Nemeth was now a fan, and he ran this as the first Rail Pace magazine center spread, collector series #1. Dick was not happy with me. he should have stayed. Uh oh. Why is the. Hold on. All right, Richie. I'm not getting forward movement here. Let's see. Can't go back, can't go forward.
Try clicking on it.
Click it on the picture.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, okay, here we go. All right. So now I'm into the Susquehanna, Conrail is right, by my house, but yellow engines were a lot more exciting than Conrail blue. I ended up making friends, and I'm still friends with a wonderful guy named Bill Mall, who's probably listening. Hello, Bill. Shout out to you. Bill Mall became my, as well as the other Cooperstown dispatchers, became my lifeline to Intel. This was way before Facebook. So if you wanted to know what was going on, I was told everything. And it was my understanding from Bill Mall from years later that Walter Rich enjoyed seeing my, I guess probably the center spread may have started it, but he's like, tell this guy Karlewicz whatever he wants to know. And I would call every morning at about 3 or 4 a.m. and just to check to see what was going on. And Bill says, you ought to go up and shoot the LASB. So that's what I did. I believe I was with Scott Hartley, Mike Del Vecchio, and I think my friend John Prizzi. Now, yesterday, Scott Hartley just happens to send me a photo. This is on the Lackawaxen and Sturbridge line. That is the Lackawaxen River right there, which flows to the right and joins the Delaware River. But these guys are heading down with 5 cars, and they're going to interchange, I believe, with a pair of SD50s. According to Scott's memory, Conrail SD50s will be waiting for them when they arrive. Here is the shot that Scott Hartley took. Thank you, Scott. That's me standing on the roof of the Chase Vehicle Express. That's Mike Del Vecchio, I believe, in the gray coat. Notice the broken tail light in the back of the station wagon, and the smoke coming out of the back. Apparently, they ran back to Honesdale light, and Scott doesn't like to shoot light engines, so he said he wanted to add the mileage to his odometer. So he rode, but he just sent me this picture yesterday. I just think it's totally awesome. Okay, so now getting into the Susquehanna and what I did as far as constructing all of this, just so you know, the reasoning behind these photos is to sort of paint the picture of, who am I now as a rail photographer, because I photographed many other things. And I did take a break from rail photography for almost 20 years and studied documentary photography and mostly shot Tri-X film and did nothing but gritty, in your face, human condition photography. But this here is when I was catching on fire with New England, and again made another trip up to the Vermont Railway. And this is Barn Swallow Farm in South Shaftesbury. At the time that before this farm became like a gentleman farm. This is early one summer evening, and these guys have come down from Rutland. They're going down to Hoosick Junction, picked up the interchange with the B&M, and they're headed back to Rutland. Saturday mornings, the VTR, I got wind that the VTR Vermont Railway was running every Saturday. They were running south to Hoosick Junction. That is Mount Equinox, I believe. I believe it is. In the background, it might be Mount Tabor also. I'm not sure. I believe this is East Dorset, so it's possible it's not Equinox. But anyway, here's a little 501, little switcher heading down it'll make its way down through Manchester, down to North Bennington, and on over to the interchange at Hoosick Junction on the B&M. Probably a different day. Here we are at Sunderland, Vermont. I'm up in a field which is now the yard of quite a big house. That is definitely Mount Equinox looming in the background. Um, the farm that you see there is now the Hill Farm in Sunderland, Vermont. It's quite a beautiful bed and breakfast, and the church still stands beside the cemetery there. E.C. Crosby and Sons, classic coal and grain dealer. I I don't know where I came upon these guys. I don't see too many other pictures of this train in my collection, so I may have just been up in the area and fooling around by the coal dealer, and I think this guy just happened upon me. But I just thought it was it's a maintenance away train, probably ballast. But I just thought that I've got a number of pictures of this particular facility with trains going past it. But I just thought it was kind of neat with the Jeep and the hoppers. Just all came together with the coal pile. Everything that you see now in front of the building is all like old tires and probably a couple of old cars. Started to do a lot of chasing with longtime friend George Poval. We started killing it up in New England. We made numerous trips all across up to Maine and New Hampshire, and a couple of CN wide cabs heading west on what I believe was later become the St. Lawrence and Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken. Perfect day with the frozen river in the foreground there, throwing up some nice light. Newport Center, I believe this is, and this is a CP job running out of Newport, probably heading west, possibly up to Richford. Again, you know, it's funny. Photographers today, I would say, I have no problem saying it, but you almost, especially with people using iPhone, there's no way you could take a bad photo, but getting those chromes just right was not an easy task, of course. And everybody fries a bunch of them before they learn. And shout out to my good buddy Richard A. Hover, who is so gracious and scanned all the old stuff that you're looking at, all these old slides. I bring Rich a couple boxes of Linden's chocolate chip cookies, and he's like, "Give me the cookies, I'll scan the slides." So everything you're looking at wouldn't be here if it weren't for Rich. George and I were running up along the Lyndonville sub, and this was one of our marathon, trips through New England, and we just happened to come into town, and we see the headlight on this guy coming around the bend. I believe this is probably at Lyndonville, and spun the station wagon around and hauled back and just ditched it. This is a total grab shot. Just throw the doors open on the station wagon, run out into this guy's yard. That's it. Boom, back in the car, and here we go. But look at the little road meandering up into the back there. I never even noticed that before. And listen to the audience, you guys. I was putting this together, and I'm thinking some of these guys are going to be upset. They're like, "Oh, he's not going to show these again." But looking at stuff on a phone or an iPad, or just scrolling and clicking and going to the next thing, when you really start to understand the stories that go behind the photos, which most people don't read a lot of stuff on Facebook. They just look at the pictures and go to the next one. But it's really nice to see them in this type of a presentation and in this context, because then you can appreciate all that goes into making these pictures. This is train RS1. I believe this guy is heading down. This is Crystal Lake. Wish I didn't cut the top of the mountain off there, but I was so excited just to see all that powder flying. And it's my understanding, my buddy Chuck Killian tells me that this is just all trees. This whole little pit down in here is just all giant trees. You cannot do this shot anymore, but man, just the way those RS-18s are just candy stripes are glowing in that light. and all the branches just full of snow. It was just like no place like photographing in Vermont for me. Okay, this is Lamoille Valley. This is a former Central Vermont RS-11, now being operated by the Lamoille Valley, who took over, I believe. Um, look, information like I'm sharing right now is not my forte, but I probably wrote a bunch of this stuff over the last couple of days so I could reference it on the screen. But this is the, I believe it's the CP Richford branch. I know it's the Richford branch, but what a beautiful locomotive. And I just love the way they just took out the top of that, what used to be a C, and now left with the LV. But we're so glad so much of what we ran up to New England to capture is all gone, including this line right here. It's pretty sweet with the lumber and the herd out in the field. I'd go back in a minute if it was all there. That's why I love the Battenkill so much. Again, I was doing some camping up New Hampshire. This is the New Hampshire and Vermont, I believe it is, Railroad, RS-11. I was told that they run out of, I don't know, it was Whitefield maybe, and they head over to the Guilford interchange over at Wells River. And I swear, just happened to come down the road and we hear him blowing for the previous crossing. Just throw the car off on the side of the dirt, jump out, and this was the first shot of what was a very short chase, but just couldn't get a finer day. Like, I mean, dark nose, I'll take it, you know? I recall back in time, people used to criticize, oh, the nose is dark. I wouldn't kick that picture out or the situation. Now, George and I did a story in Rail Pace years ago, and if Steve Carlson is out there listening, he remember it well. It was called The Clash of Seasons. We wrote the story on the way home from this trip, but we headed up to Vermont in October of '87. It was probably October 4th. We're heading up to do a couple of days of peak foliage in Vermont. We run at Albany into a blinding snowstorm that would last from 11 in the morning till 11 at night. And we know that because it took us, 12 hours to get to Montpelier, driving in that station wagon that you saw with the cracked tail light. And I kept telling George, we're going up Route 7 through out of North Bennington. We're going up the hills towards Sunderland, and every time the car started slipping, I'm like, jump in the back, and he's jumping up and down to try to get that intermittent traction as the car was wiggling up the hill. Every bed and breakfast was booked. Sorry, we can't take you. We'll sleep on the floor. Nope, the floor is all occupied. And we just drove all day in a freaking blizzard. And numerous trees down, but a day or two later, they ended up running a monster train up to Rutland with three RS1s on it. And actually, George slipped on a rock and fell in the river, and I'm the only person that got this picture. So I've shown it on Facebook before, but it looks better up on in this type of a situation. Lamoille Valley 7804 running through, I think, Hardwick. I don't know what that blue car is, but that little powder blue looks like a little, I don't know, reminds you of my mom's Maverick, but just love the little farm and the whole little scene. This is, I believe, now a bike path. But here they are with two cars and a wooden flanger heading east in some beautiful winter light. Quabog Transfer ran a cool operation out of Palmer, Mass. And George and I were up in the Bellows Falls area. And I believe we came down into town, and these guys had just pulled in, and they're going to go north on the Con River line. Excuse me. And this is probably one out of three shots that we were able to get. I believe that's the switch to the lumber facility there. And you know, you don't need that 3/4 lighting, which I'm kind of, that was the old school, rail pace light was, oh, you got to have the nose lit and the sun over your shoulder, like the Kodak box told you. But you see all the detail when you get some backlight or cross light going. And this is probably a little bit of each. Just love that metallic green paint. Reminds you of the stuff they used to sell in the little cans of testers, candy apple red and metallic green. I mean, they make a nice model for the railroad. Okay, 6 Jeeps throttling up out of Brattleboro early one morning, and I'm surprised, as dark as it was, that you know, thankfully he wasn't moving too quickly, so probably was a fairly slow shutter speed, but it just worked. And all those plumes, Mike Del Vecchio would say, total plumage. I don't know. Chuck Killian would know where this is, but I'm not sure, so I won't say. But just looks, probably it's early. I would say early. I think this is early evening, perhaps. On the CV. Miss all those Jeeps, man. I'll tell you, that was a sweet, sweet operation. This is the Georgia High Bridge, and Jeep Nines were just beautiful, and the combinations of the Grand Trunk ones mixed in and the blue red CVs. I believe this is a little. I think there's a hobby store here, if I'm not mistaken now, overlooking this bridge. So my ramblings and my journeys around New England, I'm trying to sprinkle a little bit of this and a little of that, with no focus on anything in particular, except to show the breadth of coverage that we were able to achieve. And sometimes I was with George, sometimes I wasn't. Didn't much matter. But let me just look at this. Okay, yeah. Sorry, this looks like a little soft on the scan, perhaps, or it could have been me with the shutter speed, one or the other. But scenes like this, I don't know what kind of a silo that is in the center, but just to see that much wood in a scene, and that's the Williams River cutting right behind those barns there. And this is, I believe it's called Gassett's Gulf. There's a talc plant behind me on the other side of the highway. Yeah, Gassett's Gulf, that's it. Just west of Chester, Vermont. Okay, I guess, I remember Mike writing a review for my Susquehanna book, and he wrote in the review in Railfan magazine that he remembered one day where I scaled a splintered telephone pole, got to the top, and yelled down while I was pulling splinters out of my hands, "Yo, you got to see this freaking shot." Well, this is a shot done from a tree of the Cuttingsville Trestle, where it crosses the Mill River and I believe Route 103. Everybody shoots this now with the drone. I am happy to say I've never seen anyone shoot this picture before. But what's cool about it is, so I get up in the tree, the train, you can hear him coming. He's working, I guess, upgrade to get to the bridge. Here he comes. And the bridge is dark like in the foreground there, right? It's all dark. And all of a sudden, as he starts to come out where that like third hopper is, he starts to get on the bridge. And I can't even see the clouds because there's old foliage around me. And as he's coming out on the bridge, the sun is trying to come out. So I just set the camera to like 500, 5.6. I'm like, if it's going to be lit, it's going to be killer. If it's not, it doesn't matter anyway. And I set it for full bright. The guy came across the bridge, and by the time he got to the center, there came the sun, and it was like, boop, boop. There he goes. This picture appeared on the inside front cover of Trackside magazine. If any of you older guys are out there listening, you will remember Trackside magazine was what George Poval and I published back in the late '80s. It was the predecessor to Railroad Explorer, and it was the country's first all-color, no advertising rail publication. And we had some really outstanding contributors that gave us some dynamite work. Expanding on the coverage of the CV, I believe I went up with my buddy the late Dick Herbert, and this is the operation out of New London. A couple Jeeps just like pluming it up there, just below Route 95, I believe, in New London. But just some killer light, man. And it just don't see things like this too much anymore. Doing the CV in New London also brought me into proximity with the Providence and Worcester. I believe this is a little inlet by the cove there. And this probably was in Trackside magazine also back in the day. But so much has changed with railroading in the Northeast, and I'm just glad I spent so much time doing what I did. Now this is about a couple of miles from my house. This is West Shore, as in West Shore Railroad, West Shore Road in Stony Point, New York. I in that station wagon that you saw were sectional window cleaning ladders. And I have been a window cleaner. I'm now a window cleaning contractor. Started cleaning windows when I was about 12 years old, doing it for a living from when I was 16. And I always had a set of 4 sections of ladder in the back of my station wagon. So when I would rail fan and I wanted elevation, I would pull out 3 pieces of ladder, connect them, and one on top of the other, and lean them. They had a special notch in the top section where you could put it on the corner of a building, or in this case, a telephone pole. So if you can see all the way in that bottom right corner, those wires are coming in to right about probably where my knees are, and I'm standing up on this ladder beside the passing siding as this southbound Conrail freight is rolling, stretched out near CP 38 in Stony Point, New York. And I think safe to say that the conductor is probably snoozing because he's definitely not seeing me. Back in the day when you could walk along the Hudson line without getting, the police called on you way before 9/11. This is probably 88, I'm going to say. This is right opposite Iona Island. I think I went down below the Bear Mountain Bridge and walked down and did some stuff down by the tunnel down there. And back before the FL9s disappeared at milepost 44. Yeah. The light was always great in the early evening. And I remember Dick Herbert, late Dick Herbert again, who was a mentor of mine. I was very fortunate to have him in my corner. And check it out, I never even noticed that green signal like right behind me, right? But yeah, he said you should go down there and shoot these, Karlewicz. You got to get down there and shoot them things, Karlewicz. Get down there. So this was the month of May, probably 1988. So I made my way into the north end of the tunnel with a long lens, turbo liners. Didn't get enough of them, but they sure made a beautiful sight in the contrast with the shadows. This is the tunnel. I don't know what it's called, but right below the Bear Mountain Bridge, there's a tunnel right at the eastern foot of the bridge. And I actually don't recall the day that I made this picture, But what's interesting is I'm now just realizing is that old concrete milepost and then the new one, the new tag up on the metal pole. You know, with the scanner and being able to, and with Photoshop, I believe this picture was probably in a slide page. I don't even know why I kept it, but it was probably pretty dark. And with all the stuff that you can do with Topaz, removing the noise, and there's some noise on the nose of that thing, but just the mood of it, it's incredible what the technology can do and how many slides we threw out that would have been beautiful to have now. This was the day I met Tom Nemeth from Rail Pace. I was ecstatic. It was me and Dick Herbert drove up to, it snowed, the night before. Everything was blasted in snow. And I spoke to Billy Mall and he says, yeah, NTV4 is going to go out of Binghamton in the morning. Probably around, I think the crew was called for 6:30 or something. Probably leave by 7. We got to Starrucca probably about 7:30. I went through a divorce and a lot of my slides disappeared. Some really nice Battenkill stuff and some of my Susquehanna and some railroad models too. Some of my Boston and Maine HO scale stuff just managed to slip away. But this was the day that I met Tom, and Dick Herbert, and I chased this thing all the way to Ramsey. We ended up the chase, started at 7:30 and chased the train till 3:30 in the afternoon. And this is along the Delaware River and Route 17 near Deposit. 5 Alcos that you can see, and one hiding behind the back of the building there. This is Hackensack, and back in the days when that's what was running, and what a miracle to actually see that. It's funny, I don't even go down to shoot this bridge much anymore, but I probably should, but I don't know. Having this slide makes me feel like, okay, I was there. All right, this is the day in Campbell Hall along Erie Street that SLN3 was outlawed in Campbell Hall. And I think we were up there. I was up there at 5 in the morning, and it was probably still snowing. And we realized that this train was just blasted in snow, but it wasn't going anywhere. So we hung around and shooting it from all different angles. It was covered in snow. And then we realized that it just wasn't going to go. Then all of a sudden, the sky started to break, and the sky turned kind of purple. And but the snow started melting off of it. And this next picture. Okay, so you can imagine Jim Boyd taking a little template and putting it around the nose of this thing with that left cropping of a cut of branches, and that became a vertical, and that became Railfan magazine went across the top, and that was the most incredible thing I could have ever imagined. I never dreamed of being on the cover of a magazine before, but notice the kids walking down Erie Street on the right. And but yeah, this thing just sat there, and then all of a sudden it all just started to melt away. But Jim Boyd and I ended up doing night shots right here. Jim did a shot from the street, looking right to left with that little I guess a little relay box or something there, and he lit it up with his bulbs. And then we did a shot up at the crossing, which became I think it's in the Susquehanna book, but the Christmas tree in the little village green was all decorated, with Christmas lights, and him and I did it. So it was cool. And again, I met Jim because of Mike Del Vecchio, so I'm eternally grateful for that. This is a Nepra Chemical, which I believe is now a Superfund site. This is in Harriman, New York, right off of the old Erie and Susquehanna. I think it's SU 100 took over the switching for Conrail that day, and I don't know if I was probably by myself, and but to see them in this kind of an industrial site was It was quite interesting. And as you can see now, the BN SD45s are, on the scene, and we enjoyed them more when they were yellow than green, but we were excited when the green ones came along. The southern tier was great. Tuxedo was cool, and that whole section from like Central Valley down to Suffern was my territory because I grew up and lived in Rockland. I was living in Pomona at the time, right near the Palisades Parkway. So to get up here was 15, 20 minutes, boom. You're always going to catch something. This is OIBU coming flying through the snow at the station. Excuse me. And if you were out early in Tuxedo, you never knew what you were going to catch. Um, Sorry, it's 8:45. I have no idea where we are in this, but I'm going to get moving. So this is the falls at Tuxedo on the Ramapo River. And again, if you were sitting down here, this is probably another one where the dispatchers at Cooperstown told me that NTV4 would be out of Port Jervis at a certain time. And it's funny, as the shadows are subsiding from the embankment there, he just came at just the perfect time. This is an OCS coming the opposite way, coming through the S curve there and into the rock cut at Tuxedo. That's Route 17 in the background below the White House. This is probably TV 300 coming down, curving along the Ramapo River. And this is interesting. I guess the Bud cars came down from Port Jervis, and I just posted this photo last week on Facebook, and someone said that they remembered this being a detour. This 6370 Susquehanna unit is coming in the background there. Apparently, this was a detour from when they had their derailment at Franklin, when the railroad proved that they hadn't done enough work to rehab the Sparta Mountain, line and the old LNHR. But notice that little Conrail caboose and the Jeep there switching the yard in the background, which of course is now ruled by Norfolk Southern and train H70. Here is another detour over the river line of a Sealand train. Bob Collins, Robert F. Collins, is off to my right down on Iona Island. I don't know what happened, but Tom used his photo in the book, Susquehanna book, and I don't know how this slide got overlooked, but it looked a little dark, and Photoshop brought it back to life. So I was happy to find it, and I'm happy to share it with you guys tonight. This is the Jordan spreader and a pair of Jeeps heading west. I see snow flying there in the background, which I never really noticed because I never looked at this thing long enough before, but going by the station at Pompton Lakes. And this is a ballast train. I believe this is probably Oak Ridge. I know that Fredericks thing is not there anymore. They used to have some cool signage on the old coal dealer at Butler as well, Butler Coal and Lumber. Killer Light. I don't know, I think I discovered Beautiful Light by accident, but then once I started seeing the results of it, there's no question it's better to be out in the last 2 hours of daylight or the first. Here's a trio of Chessie cats going by Lake Grinnell. And obviously it's too early for the swimmers to be out there because the mask was left on the float from the day before. But what a charming little community. And it's all grown up now, all along the right of way there. We've got to see if we could talk to the railroad and see if we can maybe, clear it out a little bit. But SU-99 rolls through here in daylight, but the only place you can shoot it is from up above the overhead bridge. Now, this is a picture that was actually on the cover of the Susquehanna book, but I looked at it, and I just worked on this today in Lightroom, and there's some stuff in the foreground on the left side that I took out where I believe I had snapped or cut some of these saplings, and they were like all these little shoots. Anybody's got the book, you'll notice the pictures on the cover, but it's got all these little broken fragments of trees in the foreground. That's probably, I went crazy on it because knowing that this guy was coming back from Warwick. This is the Sparta to Warwick Saturday turn. Notice the telltale. I think the wires are clipped, but you could notice those strands coming down off the pole. And this was one boxcar and the beautiful yellow bay window caboose. And this is looking east on the former LNHR. There's the telltale again, looking at it from the opposite direction. Lighting isn't great, but I don't know. Unique power, you know. A couple of propane cars, and it's a Saturday, and they're heading to Warwick. Tribes of rail fans out chasing after these Saturday trains. It was a blast, and it was funny. Nobody really got in anybody in each other's way. We all were just like coexisting. It was pretty great. I wonder where that private property sign ended up. Woodruff's Gap, you know, just real straightforward. I don't know. I guess some interesting power at that time. It was definitely a transition time on the Susquehanna. Not like today where you see the same power set going back and forth. You never knew what you were going to get on the Sealand trains. That Santa Fe unit, I don't remember how long it stuck around, but it was fun when you'd catch it. And those green monsters were pretty grimy before they got painted. But I went back to shoot the Pope Mobile, just took a different tact on it. There's that little hill on the left. And here, I guess I was advancing because I was actually realizing that there was a little more depth to the scene if you moved over a little bit. Don't know if that farm is still there, but it was quite beautiful, actually. The countryside out there in that part of Jersey. This is Deposit, and I'm no Eric Williams. And Eric Williams, hello out there. I love Eric Williams. He's a good friend, and I love his work. And I showed this to my wife the other night, and I'm like, this looks like something Eric Williams would shoot. Because he's always doing layers, and he looks through space, and he's always building photos with all this geometry involved and stuff. And there's so much like symmetry. I don't know. This picture sat with no attention at all given to it for almost 40 years. I just found it in the slide page, sent it to Rich Hover with some chocolate chip cookies, and boom, here is an eastbound at Deposit, blowing through the snow. This became another center spread. That is Devin Lawton, conductor for the Susquehanna. He goes, I'm up in a tree on the west end. Listen, I say all this in fun. Anybody who knows me, I am not full of myself. I'm just a guy who loves and is excited about what I do. But I'll never forget the morning we all showed up at Starrucca, and I was looking all around, looking up, and there were no drones. It was nothing but climbing. And I got my bow saw, and I climbed up this tree, and they're like, guys are yelling up, how's it look up there? I'm like, it looks great, hoping nobody would follow me. Nobody did. But Devin Lawton, so here's another scene. Here's another shot where the train, if you notice that dark spot back there, or where the cars are like going a little around the bend, just before they go around the bend, the whole thing was kind of dark. And you hear the train coming, he's coming, and I'm like, oh, what's going to happen here? And all of a sudden, the cloud starts to move a little bit. And it's again another one of those 500, 5.6. If it's not going to be lit, it's not going to matter. But if you open up and the sun comes out, it's going to be fried. So just do it. And Devin Lawton says, Karlewicz is in the tree. And he goes running and putting his face up to the window. He comes out in rail pace. This thing is the center spread. And there's Devin Lawton's head right in the shot. Go, Devin. Tell you, the Susquehanna guys were some of the friendliest guys I've ever known in all the railroads that I photographed. They were always cool with me. The dispatchers were great. Billy Mall and I are still buddies, and it's like all this stuff. This would not exist if people didn't tell you what was going on. And now, 40 years later, I can share it with you guys. The railroad called me and said, "We want you to go out to Western New York. We're going to run our premiere. We're going to have the premiere of our K line service." And I believe this stuff was going to go up, up the end up going up the D&H up to Canada, and they were going to run this with these new units that they got, and they're like, "We want to hire you to go out there." And I stood in a tree overlooking the Portageville Trestle from 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. And so, wind howling. It was about 10 degrees out. I couldn't come down because I wouldn't have been able to get the shot, and stood in a tree for 4 hours, got the shot on Portageville Trestle, and then made my way over here to Brown's Crossing, I think it's called, Cameron Mills, New York. Mike Stefflug territory. He rules this place, always did. But that day it was all KK, and I managed to get this shot with all that beautiful rock work and blue sky. And I don't know. Funny how you look back at this stuff and it all just comes back to you. Just, if I just looked at the slide on my Lightroom, it would be like, yeah, okay, what's the next picture? But being able to share it like this, the stories come back to you. All right, so this is 5 units on PYRP. This train is coming from Potomac Yard to Rouse, going to Rouse's Point. That's Central Bridge, New York. I think I'm with George Poval. It's late in the day, probably close to 6. The old Central Bridge Freight House is still standing. And so much of the light was gone. The line was just being swallowed up in shadows. But we found a patch of light right here, and these guys came singing right through it. Beautiful, beautiful faces on those units. This is a train going south, climbing the grade at Nineveh, near Nineveh Junction. I scanned the wrong slide. I got the slide with the guy on the engineer, his face perfectly right in the sun, like looking at me. And George and I are in position as this guy is climbing the grade in like the last minutes of daylight. See, I got to get excited about this, because if I just go like this and click and I do this and I'm like, and here's this, you guys will be sleeping. So this I posted for Easter. I didn't do too much work on the Northern Division, but I don't know how it found it, but that little Easter egg tree there with the blow up Easter bunny. Shout out to Ben Martin. He's the man up there. And just that engineer coming around the bend there, just a light hitting him just so. But I just love the Easter eggs. I don't know the Northern Division too well to tell you where this picture is, but the lighting was beautiful. Those corn bins glowing. And that little conveyor, that little loader thing there is pretty neat too. Monster thunderclouds. And I believe it is 4002, 4, 6, and 8, all in sync, going over Harpersville Trestle. Pan Am OCS, again at Scaticoke, which you saw earlier. There's a bunch of guys down there at the crossing. They're all shooting the going away shot. And I was positioned for a shot off to the left as the train came around the bend. And I just pulled back with the drone, pulled, and then noticed this guy in the boat who was in stride with his little oars there going across the pond. And he's just stopping to like take it in. And I thankfully just managed to get this picture before the nose hit the tree there, but yeah, I guess this guy was probably blown away too by the scene. Shot this probably 2 falls ago, with the first drone that I had. Um, this is Bannerman's Island, and I think that's just the Metro North train going north. But the leaves were so great. I've been wanting to go back and do this shot with the blue unit, just so to give it a little more pop. But anyway, it's pretty cool. But being out there, I'm watching the battery go down. The older drones, the battery only lasted. It was good for 20 minutes, but only lasted about 17. So when you're flying out into the middle of the river and you're seeing the headlight all the way down there, but you're watching the battery dropping down. The newer drone that I have now is good for about 36 minutes, 35 minutes. So makes things like this a lot easier and a lot less likely that you might end up in the soup, because when that battery is done, you're going down. Okay, back up to the Battenkill. Colin Bukowski is the conductor on the train, and I managed to find some accessories to include in the shot. Uh, this picture is going to be in the Battenkill book that's coming up this fall, and I asked these guys if it was okay I shoot back here. So they're like, yeah, well, the yard's a mess. No, it looks beautiful. Trust me, it's perfect. And I think Colin's doing a little Hammond there in the cab of the 4116. This is Brooks Dawson. He's a lifetime Shushan resident, born and raised in Shushan, New York. And here he is rounding the bend, going past his mother's house there on the right. That's his mom's house. So shout out to Brooks. Brooksy. This will be in the book. This is Bill Tabor, and I believe it is Mark Rustin, probably conductor. Hauling a huge, I think there was probably 18 loads, 18 or 20 loads on this train. But check out the rail, right? How it just, look at that rail right in front of the pilot, and then that big dip there. It's amazing that they just get through it the way they do. That's the new Route 67 overhead bridge up above. Okay, all 4 Alcos crossing the Hoosick River at Eagle Bridge. That is, shout out to Hal Raven and Dave Coppola. Hal Raven's switcher 3021 and Dave Coppola's 5015 and 5012. Those two RS-36s belong to New England, Southern New England Railroad. This was during the festival weekend, the 40th anniversary of the Battenkill Railroad. This is along Route 22. That's Route 22 in the background. I gotta say, Mark Glucksman. Hi, Mark. Mark is the reason I bought a drone. When I saw a couple of his pictures that he had done of the Battenkill, I said, I want to see this landscape. And so credit to him for the inspiration that I got seeing his work. And I hope that I can be inspiration to somebody else at some point. 4116 is currently out of service, so these pictures are not doable at this moment. Housatonic coming through Cornwall Bridge. There was a big telephone pole sticking out of the top of that engine and a bunch of wires, but this morning I said, this is not a documentary photograph per se. It's not like, I'm taking a piece of the house off. So, but it was early morning, real early, and the first light is just skimming across the break in the trees there. Thank you, Otto Von Track, for running this in Railfan magazine as I think it was like a center spread or something like that. It's basically just a glorified wedgie, but again, for any of you drone guys, it just opens up the whole thing when you can get up and use that wide view. But these Jeeps are back roaming the rails up on the Housatonic, so perfect time to be up there shooting them. Here's another view of Cornwall Bridge. The Pan Am detours. This is train 16R, Pan Am train that would normally travel over the B&M West End and go through the I'm having a mental block, but the tunnel, yeah, it'll come to me. Anyway, this was big when the detours were running. Everybody was in New England photographing the Pan Am detours, and this is Ludlow, Vermont, on the Green Mountain Railroad. This is actually this past winter. Train CH1. Middletown in New Jersey is my Battenkill South. It feeds the need for me to go make pictures, and it allows me to get my fix of trains without having to drive 3.5 hours. This little kid there got all excited when the train came in, but he's basically riding on his own power up that hill with that little bicycle because so excited to see the blue locomotive pull in. I think these are Jeep 15s on a rail train. My buddy Mike Foley tipped me off that they were running. So this is Manitou. This is the tunnel opposite Iona Island. I don't know if it's called Short Tunnel or what. This is the tunnel that you saw earlier with the turbo train where I was standing like in the north end of the portal looking south, which we are doing right here. And this is the New York Central Heritage 211. Another shot at Manitou. The PC unit popped real nice with the little splash of orange there just coming into view. I think this is the Lakeshore, but it's yeah, I believe this is the Lakeshore. This is at Roahook. I don't know. I don't recall seeing the coming towards you shot, but I just remember I think that the light worked better for the going away shot. But this is SLN 4 sailing over Moodna Viaduct in Orange County. Somebody's loves ginger. Can't tell you who tipped me off on this, or I would never get another message again, but thank you for this. Moodna again with a westbound train with the Erie Heritage unit. I don't know what happened with the gimbal on the thing, but I like the way this is a little cocked to the side. The CNJ unit. The CNJ unit was cool. The coming towards you shot was cool, but the going away shot was better. This is called Almost Home, this picture. I printed this 24 by 36, and it actually came out beautiful. So you really get to appreciate that Orange County landscape, from above. This is engineer Ben Martin is bringing train BH1 across Mill Riff Bridge, Matamoras, PA. And I believe this was last spring, bringing stone down for the New Jersey Transit crews that were reballasting all the track just in the area, I believe, west of Otisville. I think we got maybe 2-3 slides to go. Maybe more, maybe 6. Okay, this is last summer, in the longer days of summer. This is the SU 100. And I had a friend who was actually gave him a little bonus to drive the car so I could hang out the window and do this picture, which surprisingly came out all right. Um, this is somewhere near Hale Eddy, I believe. This is a shot with my window cleaning ladders before I had the drone. And I'm up in the tree looking up at these guys. Another scene at Mill Rift. Okay, SU-99, last fall, we had all those wildfires, right? And I'll never forget the crew calling out, "We're going into the fire, guys." They, I heard them on the radio, "We're going into the fire." And the whole place was they just disappeared around the bend. Those fires burned for, I think, a couple of weeks. But just what it did to the light that day by putting a sort of a filter over the sun um, to all those rusty colors. It's kind of cool. Newfoundland Station, SU-99. He's just come up the grade from Charlottesburg. This is Covered Bridge Road. I believe that's, yeah. I'm right below me. I think is Covered Bridge Road. And SU-99 again. This is taken this spring, probably in March, late March. The willow is just coming into bloom. I was with my buddy Bob Benjamin for this. Bob turned me on to Vernon, and it was great. I'm fascinated, and sorry, I'm fascinated with the history of the Lehigh and Hudson River, probably because of the amazing Jim Boyd, who was like the master of the Lehigh and Hudson River. Love his book. It's always an inspiration. So I try to record as much of the, remnants and the beauty of this line as I can. And that inspiration comes purely from Jim and the work that he did over many, many years. SU-99 again, as the swamp begins to pop. This is a new picture. I just made this a couple, 2, 3 weeks ago. This is SU-99, just east of Lake Grinnell. And this is a shot that I'm happy to say was never done before. And but the light just happened to come out for that first half of the train, and then everything falls into shadows beyond that. This is summer at Baird's Farm. I'm standing out there in the freaking pouring rain, and I'm waiting for the train, and I'm thinking, why am I the only loser out here, standing out here, waiting for a train in the rain? And then once I saw the road really getting soaked up, I realized that I'd probably get some nice shine. And though it's not perfect, I know I talked about it in the Panic group with Oren and Eric Williams and all those guys, and we were all poking at it and saying what could have been better. But it's the coolest picture that I have with some weird lighting, probably of any pictures that I've done. But they're a major influence on me, so I was trying to do something like that one of those guys would do. So it's kind of neat. Dixie, if you're listening, I hope you like it. All right, now we're going back to I don't know, late '80s, and this is Baird's Farm again from down by the river, by the creek actually, Wawayanda Creek. I guess this picture I made too light. I just did this today, but it was cool seeing the alcoves blending in with the BN units. Um, but this created the inspiration for this view, which was just done probably late last summer. The Bairds are great. They're very friendly. They welcome rail fans, and they really appreciate all the work that we do and the pictures that we make of the place. This is a new picture. I just did this 2 weeks ago. I'm just looking for something different because every time I drive up for SU-99, I say, what am I going to do now that I haven't already done? And why am I doing this? And, the thing is, you just never stop looking for something new and something different. And it's not, I'm going to refine this a little bit, but I like the concept of it. And we were standing there, and it was cloudy, cloudy, cloudy. And then all of a sudden, the sun just poked out just for a minute as he came around the bend. And it was cool that he had the silver bullet in there in the consist. Dixie was standing out in her backyard waving to the guys. They always give her the 5 chime salute as they go by. This is listen, I'm going to be, Burkholder can call a curve Burkholder's curve. I'm just going to say this is another KK classic. This is something that's never been done. I tried it last year and I liked it. And I just love the undulating hills. Right above the third unit is where everybody used to stand back in the day when the train would run up to Warwick and back. There'd be 20 guys up on that knoll waiting for the train to go back to Sparta in the afternoon. So to come back here now, and I'm going to do a story about Jim Boyd, and it's going to be called If Jimbo Could Fly. Okay. And I told Mike about Del Vecchio about this. He liked it. If Jim Boyd had a drone, what would he do? Excuse me. Migrant workers planting the early crop uh, of onions with SU-99 rolling by. This is up in Great Court / Chester. Another view, and that is where they were working out in the fields. Now I'm looking at it from an opposite direction with a little cloud burst, popping. This was directly inspired. If you look in the Lehigh and Hudson River book, you'll see a picture where, I don't know where Jim is standing, but he's shot in the morning, and he shot these powder blue Alcos going through the black dirt. And that spawned a whole series of pictures that I've been working on up here. And it's all because of Jim Boyd, because you got to honor the master. And if you go where he roamed, you can't go wrong. Back to the Battenkill for a couple of quick ones. This is White Creek, Eagle Bridge, a man and his son looking out over the river. And I just love the body language of the little boy holding he's got his little sleeve in his, clenched in his, and he's just watching. There goes my daddy shooting the train again. There you go, Richie, Lackawanna. Into the wilderness. This is Buttercup, RS1 number 3501, shoving on the back of a southbound Battenkill train because the train was slipping on wet leaves. It wasn't going to make it. It actually stalled on the hill. This is the day that this is the weekend that they put the kibosh on everybody's movements with COVID. And this is Sunday morning. There's only one car on the road. It's 10 a.m. And this is 5 red units. March 2019. Sunderland, northbound. This is getting up towards Cuttingsville. Train to Rutland in the evening in in Wallingford, Vermont. Gassett's Gulf, mud season. Just south of Manchester. Evening train to Rutland, spring, 2 years back. My very first steam locomotive, I'm out with Aaron, and the guy down there is Dennis Livesey with the white hat. I don't know the name of the town. These are my very first steam locomotive shots. They're all shot with the drone, and I wondered, what am I going to do with a drone with a steam engine? This one was not, however, and this is Oren Helbog giving me the privilege of sitting in the front seat, hanging out the window while he's pacing the train perfectly. Middletown, New Jersey, going by their old headquarters, train CH1, midday sun. Campbell Hall. Campbell Hall again, the opposite direction. American Lumber is in going up towards Montgomery. They're just pulling in there. They're going to switch the lumber place with the Jeep. This is Warwick. Approaching Main Street. This unit is trailing on the train. They run push-pull style. This is SU-100 at Starrucca last summer. Baird's Farm again. Perfect leader too. They were running the SD70s for a while. All they were running was SD70s. I remember just being really happy to get a standard cab on the lead. This is thrown in just randomly, just to mess with everybody, because it's like, what is this doing in here? Buffalo and Pittsburgh train down Pennsylvania. Shawmut, long gone. And I think this is it. And this picture is dedicated again to Mike Del Vecchio, who was probably on the train and who always loved his Morristown and Erie. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Well, thank you, Ken. That was a lot of great photography. I really appreciate you coming out and doing this for us.
Thank you, Richie.
And if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat.
They're all sleeping, Richie. they all went to bed at 9 o'clock. They're like, Ken's out of control. You know what it was? I couldn't see this counter, and I really didn't know. I lost my bearings, so sorry, guys. But what is it, 9:20?
You did great.
I figured we'd be done by 9:10, but I went a little over there. So thanks for.
You did great. We had a lot of great comments, a lot of praise for the presentation, and we topped out at about 125 viewers between Facebook and on the Zoom. So
What did you say? How many?
Very well attended. Yeah, 125.
Wow, nice. Hey, I'm happy. That's awesome. I literally thought at one point that there's probably going to be like 12 people are going to show up for this thing, you know? So that's good. So what did you do? You put it on Facebook?
Yeah, it's a live stream on our Facebook page, the Tri-State page.
Man, that's cool. Well, I'm really honored. Thank you. And I'm really glad that what this did was you got me to create this, you know, this package of stuff that has some logic to it and it has a story to it. So, and this is all recorded, right, Richie?
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be up on our website in a couple days.
Oh, I love it, man. So you have to send me the link and I can tell all my buddies who went to bed early that you still have to watch it. You have no excuse now. You got the link.
It'll be available on the Tri-State Plus streaming service.
Wow. All right. Well, that was oh wow. Chuck Killian just texted me. That was very enjoyable. Great job. All right.
Awesome.
Well, is everybody signed off or what?
Yeah, everyone's just sending in their thank yous and their praises for the program. So thank you, Ken. I very much appreciate it.
Got it, Richie. I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys and talking about having me come down for a visit. So thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back on the second week of June. Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.